Should I stay or should I go? Who is here from my generation that knows what comes in your head when you think about that? Trish, come on, what do you think about when you say that? Yeah, the should I stay or should I go song. Yeah. Well, I'm going to mention that in a bit. Oh, for those of you who don't know what we're talking about, you're very fortunate to not know. Jeremiah 29, verses 1 and then 4 to 7. Jeremiah wrote a letter from Jerusalem to the elders, priests, prophets, and all the people who had been exiled to Babylon by King Nebuchadnezzar. This is what the Lord of heaven's armies, the God of Israel, says to all the captives he has exiled to Babylon from Jerusalem. Build homes and plan to stay. Plant gardens and eat the food they produce. Marry and have children. Then find spouses for them so that you may have grandchildren. Multiply. Do not dwindle away. And work for the peace and prosperity of the city where I sent you into exile. Pray to the Lord for it, for its welfare will determine your welfare. Yes, should I stay or should I go? A question made ever so popular or horribly not popular by the British punk rock band back in the early 80s. And the name of that band was The Clash. Yes, The Clash. Well, one day when my brothers and I were young, our friends, the McDougals in town where I grew up in Westboro, Massachusetts, they called us on the phone. Remember phones that hung on the wall? They hung on the wall in the kitchen. And there was that big cord that always got tangled up into a big ball, and then, it was terrible. Anyway, so they call us on the phone, the ones with the rotary dials. Remember those? It seems like so long ago. It really wasn't that long ago we had all that stuff. And there was a bell that rang inside of it. And remember when the phone would ring in the house? I'll get it. Remember that kind of thing? Because it's not like your own phone now. You're like, oh. No, it was like, oh, I'll get it. Oh, I don't want to get that. Who's calling now? That's what my mother would always say. Oh, who's calling now? Anyway. So one of us answered the phone, and it was one of the McDougal boys, and they asked us, hey, you guys want to go to see a concert at the Worcester Centrum? And we're like, a concert at the Worcester Centrum. We've never been to a rock concert before, and wouldn't it be exciting to go see a rock show? And everyone was talking about how amazing concerts were, and now is our chance. And so, Mom, can we go to a concert with the McDougals? With the phone muffled against, your belly or something like that, or against your hand. And, of course, she's doing laundry at that point, probably, and doesn't really want to be answering questions at that moment. Oh, fine, yes, go. After all, she trusted the McDougals as they were close friends of ours. So back on the phone we were. Yes, we said, having no idea what concert we were going to. Great, said the McDougal boys. And our father will buy the tickets and drop us off and pick us up, because none of us could drive. And click, the phone hung up, like you used to hang it up on the receiver. And the conversation ended. And then we're like, what concert are we going to? I don't know. So he called back. Ring, ring, ring. Hello? Yeah, Tommy, what concert are we going to? The Clash, he said. The Clash. None of us liked punk rock. And we certainly didn't like The Clash. But it was our first concert, so it didn't really matter who it was or why. And a few days later, there we were going on our way to the Worcester Centrum, and the concert happened, and the concert was awful. It was terrible. It was horrible. I hated it. And their most popular song that they had was Should I Stay or Should I Go? And we looked at each other in the middle of the song and said, yep, we should go. But none of us could drive, so we had to stay after all. That answered the question for us by default, and suffer through the whole thing until their dad showed up to pick us up. Just kind of a silly story from my youth, one of many. But really, I look back and that was a terrible show, and it was, but it was suffering for us, really. But how much suffering really was it? Unlike the Israelites, who were really suffering, exiled into Babylon. We felt exiled into a show that we didn't want to see, but that was our choice, really. But they were exiled not by choice into Babylon. They were there because they were forced to go. They were conquered by Babylon and King Nebuchadnezzar. They had it all in Jerusalem. Understand that they had it all in Jerusalem. Family, home, freedom, faith, prosperity. They had it. And in a moment's time, that was all gone when Nebuchadnezzar's army overtook them and dragged them north to the great city of Babylon. They were to live out their years as conquered people, subjects of a foreign nation. Should I stay or should I go was not even a question that they really could have asked, because they didn't have a choice of their physical location. They didn't have a choice about where they were going to be. They were forced to live in Babylon. They had no choice in that. But they did have another choice. They were able to still choose. And it's a choice that we all have in our lives, sometimes many times in our lives. Because haven't we all asked the question a time or two or 102 times? And some of us ask it all the time, should I stay or should I go? I think the young generation today, and watching my kids decide where their future lies and plan for that future, watching them go through this whole ordeal, it's the young generation today, they have so many options, and perhaps too many options nowadays, the young kids. And should I stay working, or should I go to school, or should I stay in a relationship, or should I go to be on my own, or should I stay at home and mooch off my mom and dad until I'm 30, or should I go get my own place? I mean, this is all the things that go through their heads. Should I get my own place and live on my own and eat ramen noodles and hot dogs and PB&J every night because you're broke? Or should I stay in this part of the country? Or should I go where the action is, out west, where all the grand scenery is and all the young culture is? Should I go there? Many ask, should I stay in the faith of my childhood, or should I go explore other faith opportunities? And as I said, unlike our American youth of today, the Israelites didn't have a choice. They had to stay. You might say, well, Pastor Chris, you said that they did have a choice. The choice that we all have, remember? The choice that we make oftentimes and ask ourselves that question and to make that choice. And yes, I did say that. And often in our lives, even though it might seem like we may have unlimited choices, oftentimes in our lives, we can't really change our situation, can we? We're stuck. We're where we are. We're involved in this life that we're in, and we really can't change what's going on or where we are or how we're doing all this and where we are in this life. But there's something that we can always change. And it's our perspective. It's how we're looking at our lives, how we view our lives. We can change, and so could the Israelites, how we look at the circumstances that we find ourselves fixed to. How do we see them? Maybe the circumstances look like a bleak future to us. Maybe we're looking at our life circumstances and saying, how is this going to work out? How is this going to be? I don't think I'm going to like this. Well, certainly the Israelites saw theirs as a bleak future. Their nation had essentially ceased to exist. The glory years of Saul and David and Solomon were now only tales that the elders could tell. There was no Israel now, no Judah, no nothing. And then Jeremiah came on the scene. The prophet Jeremiah. He hadn't yet made his way to Babylon. He'll be going there. Maybe his neighborhood was next on the deport list. I don't know what the schedule was there, but he hadn't gotten there yet. It took a while to get all these people up there. Maybe word was getting back to him back in Judah where he hadn't yet been deported, maybe or exiled. Maybe word was getting back to him in Judah, and the people were saying, should we stay or should we go? Not that that was really an option for them, but in their hearts, they just wanted to go. And no doubt some of their prophets were false prophets, really, were telling them that God was going to do a mighty work, and God was going to set them free from Babylon, and his armies were going to come in any time now and release them from their captivity. And of course, people would naturally gravitate towards what they wanted to hear. And they thought in their own minds, maybe we're only here for a short time. Kind of like the mind tricks that we play on ourselves. Maybe this is only going to last for a short period of time, when we know it's probably not. Kind of like, when we thought that COVID was only going to last for a short period of time, like 3 weeks and it'd be over, right? That was 3 years ago. So, Jeremiah wrote a letter, verse 1. He wrote a letter from Jerusalem to the elders, priests, and the prophets, and all the people who had been exiled to Babylon by the king Nebuchadnezzar. And he wanted to set them all straight. He wanted to get them all on track. He was probably packing his bags as he wrote it in preparation for his own transport up there. And he knew that God was not going to spring the people out, all fast like. He knew it wasn't going to work that way. So he said this in verse 4. This is what the Lord of heaven's armies, the God of Israel, says to all the captives he has exiled to Babylon from Jerusalem. He has exiled. In other words, God has a plan in this. And God is going to work out his plan in this. Even though it doesn't seem at all tolerable. God has a plan in your life. He has a plan in their lives, the Israelites' lives. And that being the case, Jeremiah says basically, stay where you are. Don't plan on moving. Don't start packing up your bags until God sends some moving trucks. Don't do it. It's going to be a while. It's going to be a long time. Don't want to go. Verse 5, build homes. Plan to stay. Plant gardens and eat the food they produce. Marry, have children, find spouses for them, have grandchildren, multiply. Don't dwindle away. In other words, this is what he's saying. And this is what we can hear in this message for ourselves. Get to living. Get to it. Change your perspective. Change how you look at it. Look for the good in it. Marry, he said, have children, plant gardens, live life. No, it's not ideal. No, it's not what you would have wanted. But it's where you are right now. And that's not going to change for the foreseeable future. So stay in your hearts there. Don't go in your hearts. Because even though they were captive there in Babylon, they could have gone in their hearts. Should I stay or should I go in my heart? Should I always just want to leave this place, or should I just sink my roots down and say, okay, here's where I am. I'm going to live God's life that he has for me right where I am. Stay in your hearts, Jeremiah said. Choose to stay and not go. And that message is so true for so many of us, so often in life. I think back in my own life, and as I was preparing this message, back when we had a lot of financial troubles in the congregation, it was like 12 years ago. Anyway, we had all those financial troubles, and we couldn't sustain a full-time pastor anymore here. And so I decided to go to work down in Concord at Lincoln Financial Group and pastor part-time while I was working full-time in Concord, which, by the way, didn't really work out too well. It was horrible. I mean, it was okay, but it was super hard. And I had so many unfinished things that I couldn't do here in the congregation and as my role as a pastor. And I had to drag myself down to Lincoln Financial Group every day and do my 8 hours down there. And the question came into my head on so many occasions during that time. The question sat in my head as I was down there, should I stay or should I go? Should I stay or should I go? But I felt that God had me here. I felt that God had me in this congregation. And I basically just got here. Very soon after I got here. And so I committed to staying on board here and to seeing what was going to happen. I mean, it looked kind of bleak back then. But I committed to staying both physically and in my heart. And I'm sure glad that I did. I certainly am glad that I did. It wasn't really that long after that until opportunities opened up and freed me up. And then eventually I was able to go back to full-time pastoring here in this congregation. And all of these amazing experiences that we have all shared together through these years since, I would have missed them all. I would have missed every single one of them if I chose to go when it looked really difficult. If I chose to go when it looked really hard and like nothing good was going to come from it, if I chose to go physically or in my heart, I would have missed all of those experiences with you, with everybody here. And I couldn't even begin to count how many there have been. So many blessings. If we are where we are in life because God has led us there or pushed us there or dragged us there, then we better stay put until otherwise notified. That's the lesson I take from this. Or if on the other hand, we got into our present mucked up situation without any help from God. You know those times when you get yourself into trouble in life? You get yourself in a jam. You've done something, well, let's be honest, dumb. You made a bad choice or 16,000 and you find yourself suffering because of it. Then we might need God to unmuck us from that mud that we're stuck in. But we got to be there wherever we are. We got to have our hearts in that situation where we find ourselves and say, God, I'm here. And I'm not going to just want to get out of this all the time. I'm going to want to see you see me through. I want what you have for me right here in this situation. And God's going to do it. To be honest, God's going to do it when he's good and ready to do it. He's not going to spring you out when you want to get out. God doesn't do that. God does it in his time. You know what that is? It's the right time. And it's hardly ever our time, right? Not your time at all. Not our timing. But it's his time. And it's the right time. In other words, in life, there are usually no quick fixes. And much to the disdain of so many, there's no instant oatmeal in life. There's no instant soup or Instagram or instant gratification or instant messaging. There is just God's time when you get to the real things of life. Doesn't happen in an instant. So the Israelites in Babylon quickly learned to embrace the wisdom that says that with God, a day is like 1,000 years, and 1,000 years is like a day with God. And they said, okay, we're here. We need to be here. And therefore, Jeremiah's advice to the Jewish exiles, and by extension, the words that we can hear from his advice, they do two things. Jeremiah is asking them to do two things. And we can hear those two things that we need to do too. First, the first of the two things that we need to do wherever we find ourselves. First, we need to decide if we're here, wherever here is in the will of God, and this is the will of God. And so, if this is the will of God first, second, our second choice is we need to settle into life as though we are here for life, or until God moves us on. There's this old traditional Quaker phrase, proceed when way opens. The Quakers are just such peaceful people and just such people that are submitting to the will of God. And their philosophy is proceed as way opens. We're like, no, I'm going to open a way right now because I want out. No, they're like, no. Proceed when way opens, because God makes the way where there seems to be no way. We want quick solutions, fast relief. We want to force a way out of our situation, or we want to force a change for the better in our lives. But the Quakers, in their peaceful perspective, proceed only when way opens and not until then. Jeremiah's counsel in that is that in life, the circumstances that we find ourselves in do not always have an easy solution. And it might be best to adapt to your surroundings. Adjust to make life bearable. And adopt the lifestyle that's the social norm, as he says, for the neighborhood. Be willing to take the long view. Because this problem or this situation or this context that you find yourselves in is here to stay for the foreseeable future. So stay. Don't go, even in your heart. Stay. Decide to live a meaningful life within that situation rather than outside of it. Because you don't know how long it's going to last. Or you don't know how difficult it's going to be. Either way, decide to stay. The Israelites, they wrote Jeremiah, and they probably asked him, is God going to have us stay or God going to have us go? Jeremiah answers in terms of dollars and cents and marriage and family and houses and farms. But the bottom line is the exiled community must get a grip and get a life and see the harsh facts and begin a major readjustment of their perspective. They might wish they still had the temple, but they don't. They might wish they still had lived within the walls of Jerusalem, but they don't. They might wish that they could still drink the wine of their own vineyards, but they couldn't. And they might wish they could sing their songs in Judah, but they can't. Jeremiah tells them that they've got to build a bridge and get over it. They must reimagine the journey. They must change their minds about where they are. The destination has changed. And getting home for them didn't happen for 70 plus years. Generations went by in Babylon. Generations went by. But for them, at that point in time, even though they wanted to get home, Babylon was their destination. He said, don't move until God moves. And by the way, he said, God is not moving yet. Don't even wish that you could be somewhere else. I remember as a kid driving up to Maine for vacations. And, it was always a long drive and quiet and boring. And as a kid, you want to be anywhere but the car for 6 hours. And this is before we had video games and cell phones and DVDs and all those things. So we just sitting there for 6 hours. Yeah, awful. Anyway, you get to the rest area. You run into the rest area. And of course, I'm a kid. I have no idea where I am. I don't know where we are on the highway or how close we are really. So you get to the rest area. You run into the rest area. You go to the bathroom or whatever. It's the Burger Kings on the interstate. And you get in there, and there's always this map on the wall. And on that map on the wall is the map of Maine. And you look at it, and there's always that red dot. You know the red dot? You are here. And I look at that, and that's all we are? We're only here? I want to be up here. I thought we were up here. We're only here. Got all that way left to go. No, I could have. I wanted myself so close. It was only a half an hour left, but as much as I wanted it, it wasn't the reality. The reality is that the red dot on the map told me exactly where I was, and I had to live in that situation. I had to be where the red dot told me I was. God is like that red dot. You are here, so be there. Don't want to be anywhere else. Be where you are. Verse 7, and work for the peace and prosperity of the city where I sent you into exile. You know what that says to us? Live life where you are, to the most that you can live it. Pray to the Lord for it, for its welfare will determine your welfare. The welfare of your situation that you're in right now will determine where you are in life. Should I stay or should I go? God, help me to stay. Help me to embrace this and to stay here until a path opens up for me. Could you stand with me?